Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into BMNR, which is facing what you could call a make or break week. We've got this really weird situation where the stock chart looks, well, pretty weak, but it's crashing right into some incredibly powerful fundamentals and a whole string of major catalysts. And it's all coming to a head, like right now. Yeah, this quote right here just says it all. It perfectly captures the insane pressure and, the massive opportunity that's all converging on this one company. It feels like all this tension that's been building up is about to snap. So, okay, let's really get into it. All right, so here's the plan. First, we're going to look at what the stock's been doing. Then, we'll pop the hood and see what's really driving this thing. After that, we'll get into a potential supply shock that's brewing. And finally, we'll see how all of these pieces are slamming together this week. So, let's be honest. If you just pull up the chart for BMNR, the story it's telling, it doesn't look great. And it's super important to understand why investors are getting nervous and why the chart itself is screaming bearish. I mean, look at this. The stock's taken a real beating, dropping 23% in just the past month. And a lot of that pain has been pretty recent, pushing the price down. And you can bet it's really testing the conviction of a lot of shareholders. And if you're into technical analysis, the charts are flashing some serious warning signs. It dropped below its 200-day moving average. It's a big deal for traders. And it suggests the momentum has just kind of fizzled out. The worry is that the price could keep sliding before it finds any real support. But, and this is a huge but, that is only half the story. You could even argue it's the less important half. See, to really get BMNR, you can't just stare at its stock chart. You've got to look under the hood at its core asset, the engine that's actually driving all its value, Ethereum. Now this is where things get really wild. Check out this disconnect. Ethereum is the backbone for almost 60% of all the real economic activity in crypto. We're talking lending, payments, all that stuff. But it only makes up 14% of the total market value. That's a huge gap, which suggests it might be seriously undervalued for what it actually does. And we're not just talking theory here. The real-world use is absolutely staggering. Just last quarter, the Ethereum network settled $8 trillion in digital dollar transactions. To give you some perspective, that's way more value than what giants like Visa are processing. And this growth is exploding all over the world. You've got massive payment companies like M-Pesa in Africa, which has over 60 million users, now building on top of Ethereum. That's bringing this enormous wave of new users and fresh demand right into the ecosystem. So why the sudden institutional rush? Well, industry leaders say it comes down to two things. First, Ethereum is just rock-solid reliable. It has literally zero downtime. And second, we're finally getting some regulatory clarity, which is the green light all these big financial players have been waiting for to jump in. Okay, so here's where the story takes another crazy turn. You have all this demand just pouring in, right? Well, it's about to collide head-on with a massive, and I mean historic, squeeze on the available supply of Ethereum. This slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got a huge, growing line of institutions, BMNR included, all trying to lock up their Ethereum. But on the other side, get this. For the first time in almost a year, there is literally nobody in line to unlock their Ethereum to sell it. The exit line is at zero. And no, that's not an exaggeration. That zero is a real data point. This is a historic supply situation. And, basic economics tells us what happens when surging demand meets a shrinking, locked-up supply. You often get a major, major price squeeze. So here's the bottom line. You've got this tension, right? BMNR's weak-looking stock versus its incredibly strong supply-crunched asset. And it is all about to come to a head because of three massive events that are all set to collide next week. It's really like a perfect storm of catalysts. On January 14th, you've got the final deadline for a super high-stakes shareholder vote. The very next day, BMNR has its huge investor day. And on that same day, the U.S. Senate is expected to vote on a major piece of crypto regulation. It's a lot. So let's zoom in on that shareholder vote for a second, because it puts investors in a really tough spot. It's almost a paradox, and whatever they decide is going to have enormous consequences for where BMNR goes from here. So here's the catch-22. If shareholders vote less, they give the company the power to issue a ton of new shares. Now, that lets them keep buying more Ethereum and keep their growth strategy alive, but it also means current shareholders could get diluted. If they vote no, they avoid that dilution, but the entire business model pretty much grinds to a halt for 6 months or more. And this forces a really difficult question for anyone who holds BMNR stock. Even with the very real risk of giving management that much power with a yes vote, is that the only choice to avoid the guaranteed stagnation that a no vote would bring? It's a tough call. So let's just recap the whole setup for BMNR heading into this week. 1, you have incredibly strong fundamentals from that powerful Ethereum engine. 2, you've got a historic supply squeeze with that execu at 0. And 3, you have this perfect storm of catalysts all converging at once. Which, of course, leaves us with the ultimate question. With all these forces, fundamentals, market mechanics, controversy, all coming together at the same time, is this it? Is BMNR about to have that explosive, parabolic moment everyone's been talking about? What you should really take away from all this is that the disconnect between BMNR's stock price and its real value, well, it might be about to resolve itself, one way or another. And it could happen very, very soon.